Well, this week we have covered the special training of the 12 in the later Judean ministry. And so this mini lecture will be divided into two PowerPoint presentations. What I'd like to do is look at period number 5. That was a helpful chart that I had given out early on in the class. But period 5 is striking because this is where Jesus now begins his training with the inner group, or the special training of the 12, those 12 apostles whom he would give authority and he would have a special bond with. Now, we have to also include that Judas is the one who betrays Christ, and so then we are left with 11 at the end of his ministry. So we're looking at the special training of the 12. What is fascinating about this section is that you have the miracle feedings. When you look at the miracle feedings of Christ, the feeding of the 5,000, it's recorded in all 4 Gospels. Some might ask why. And I think it's unique to the Gospels is that it's similar to the birth announcements and also the resurrection, the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ. So the Gospels touch on these events as climactic, or the need to show the readers that this is a special event in the life of Christ and the life of his followers. And so the feeding of the 5 touches that climactic event. That's why many scholars believe that the 4 gospel writers include this as a special feature. But what does the feeding of the 5,000 show us? Simply that the world is hungry, both physically hungry, that people need to be fed. And then the second aspect is to show how physical hunger is contrasted with spiritual hunger, the need to feast upon Christ. And this is going to dovetail later on in John chapter 6, where Jesus appeals to the followers and those who are interested in Christ to come and eat upon him, feast upon him as the bread of life. But again, spiritual hunger contrasted with the actual physical hunger in the world. The bread of life discourse is the section in John chapter 6. He is the bread of life who comes to satisfy the hunger both physically and spiritually. So this is that feast upon Christ, come and live for eternity. Also similar to quenching the thirst to those who are thirsty. He gives water and abundance. So, but in John chapter 6, we learn in John 6:66 is where many walked away. They couldn't listen to Jesus' teaching anymore. They were appalled by what he had to say about eating his flesh. So that's the bread of life discourse. In looking at the special training of the 12, you now have Jesus moving into the Gentile territory, where he begins to touch the lives of those who need the gospel as well. They're the ones who are afflicted with diseases. They're the ones who have unbelief, who come to spiritual transformation. Mark chapter 5 and 7, Matthew 50 touches on this special event of Jesus going into the Gentile area, mainly to present the gospel to outsiders, to show how Israel is to be the light of the gospel to the watching world. And so that concludes how Jesus goes into the outside world beyond the nation of Israel. The section on the rock of the church, where Peter is interacting with Jesus, the foundation of the church. There's a few interpretations as to what this passage is referring to. First is a Roman Catholic position that the rock is in reference to Peter, who he is as the last of the many of the apostles, including Paul. Peter's confession is a second widely accepted view. Peter calls Christ the Son of God. And then a more conservative evangelical view is that the rock is in reference to Jesus Christ. As 1 Peter chapter 2 picks up what Peter authorized, it says that this precious stone chosen is Christ. He's the cornerstone of the church. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 20 focuses on the apostolic teaching, or the truth founded by Christ through the apostles, and that through the apostles they are presenting Christ, who is the cornerstone of the church, that is to be taught and modeled. So the Rock of the Church is a special time in the life of the 12. Another feature of the training of the 12 is the death of Christ foretold. Remember, there were fixed occasions in which Jesus was teaching the 12, and he began teaching that he was going to die, and he explains the time and the place where he needs to go. And the disciples are upset by this. Peter is also upset and says, why will this be? And again, these are special moments where Jesus is teaching the 12 concerning the present mandate to spread the gospel, to go into communities and touch others, and also that there is a coming death, a sacrifice for sin that's going to take place. The Transfiguration is a pivotal moment as well, where he takes a few of the disciples, the inner group, up to the mount to show them a couple things. Number one, to show that the Father approved of Jesus, even though Israel did not. A second thing why you have the Transfiguration story in the Gospels is to encourage the apostles, to give them hope, to show them that they are not alone, and to increase their faith. And then lastly is the aspect of anticipating the Messianic kingdom that is going to come. Christ is going to reign and with his followers. So that concludes the inner workings of how Jesus is working with the 12 and concluding his coming to the end of his earthly ministry. And we'll go to the second aspect of his ministry in the later Judean ministry as he continues to move forward during these 3 years of operation.